Alrighty, so I'm recording this video the morning after our first round of code reviews finished last night, and I am more convinced than ever the importance of the code reviews, and I think hopefully all of us walked away learning something new about what, hopefully you understand what I require and I understand where your knowledge is at. And the good news is I think everyone's made great progress, and so it was fun to see that and look at your code. So here's the deal, is your next one is not that far away. Okay, that's probably, maybe you may have a gut feeling, it's like we have 2 weeks of code along and then we have your next one. Now in support of that, of course, our code alongs, our code ups actually will cover what Andrew will build, which will be his weather app. Okay, and now I say this, not that this information is related, but I think I've told some of you, most of you in person, that there is an issue with the way Andrew's going to show you how to use the Google API, Maps API, because at the time he recorded it, it required what you're going to hear, if you haven't already, and you're going to hear several times through this course, is an API key. And the reason I put this code here was when in the lecture, in lecture 28, which is right at the beginning, after he covers the all-important event loop, he actually is able to go do this without an API key. And he knows, and students have already told him, and he's planning on fixing this because Google has now required an API key. And so you can look at this link, which I've provided here, to show what his workarounds. One is to use Google MapQuest API. You can totally do that. You just have to change some things about the code that you were using. And then he talks about getting a API key, right? So and I've talked to most of you, so hopefully this is not an issue. And this is the other thing that I've provided here, is that it's fairly simple to get a key. The one thing you have to do is you do have to give them a credit card, and I talk about this in here, but you get $200 of credit, and they're not going to charge your credit card until this $200 of credit has been used up. And I can tell you, most of you will not need this. Okay, you just won't, because I will be shocked if anybody uses more than, honestly, $2, if that, so of the credit. Okay, just to be clear. So to get started, and he talks about it in his link, but you can just go to the Google Maps. And by the way, if you want to look at the pricing to confirm what I'm talking about, you can look here. But you can go here and get started, choose Maps, and then it's going to have you select, and there's the Maps, and you're going to get an API for that. I can't remember how many different options. I don't want to overwrite my key. Let's see if I can get to pick your product. You have to set up a project and then set up your building. So let me just see here. I already have. I called mine Project 94, and this is actually, in this case, it just went through and did it. Okay, so I'll have to update my API, which is not necessarily a bad thing, right? So, and again, because I've already had it, right, your API key is implemented, and then at that point, you will just copy and paste that into this part of your query string, and this is something you learn about, and then you do this, what is it, the and symbol, and the address. Okay, so this is the new part of that you can now do once you have your API key, or you go use MapQuest. Okay, all right, so so this moves us into, and I want you to already start thinking about the next development project, which is really what I started with today, right? And it's time to give the second one some thought. And I say here you can use the same topic and even the code if you want, although your code for the API is going to look very different. I'm going to show you my finished dev 2 in a second. But it's because it's different. It's not, you are accepting user input, but you're not storing that input. You're just, you absolutely could. So you have to give this some thought if you want to take what you've already done for Develop It 1 and use it for Develop It 2, or whether you want to choose a different API or different topic. And I find students often use something different for the second one. Okay, and I actually have the requirements already up for the second one, so you can check that out. But let me give you, and this is what I want you to do. So regardless, just give this some thought. You're not completely committed, but the more thought you give to this, the better the next couple of weeks are going to be, because then instead of trying to figure it out, you're actually working on it, right? I want you to start searching for APIs. And you might go, well, how do I do that? Google is always your friend. There's actually several like APIs. Actually, I think if you just start there, honestly, there's some there, and there's some information on the APIs. He also gives here. This is the one no, that's not the one I was looking for. I think there's an API directory or something like that, pretty close to that. Yeah, programmable web. That was the one I was looking for. API programmable web, and then you can just, I mean, you see all of these out here. And so here's my word of warning about this, okay? Is that you want to find one that has good documentation. That is the most important thing I can tell you, okay? Is to find one and spend a little time looking at their documentation, because the Google Maps documentation is excellent. I end up using something called Twilio because in my app, which again I'll show you, the last part of it sends an SMS. And the part of the reason I use them, and by the way, this is a free API key, is that their documentation was so beautiful. It was like a thing of beauty. And so that's why I use them. So back to here, is that at this point, I just want you to start thinking about this, because as you go through this first round of developments, you're going to see how he creates and how we create following along the weather app that he has. Okay. And so start thinking about, well, what did I do for the first one? What might I want to do for the next one? And this is the time to start thinking about that. Okay. All right, so let me just scroll down here and look at that. I've already released the base requirements. We'll probably refine this a little bit for your next development, okay? And so here's the deal, is if you want to take the first part of the weather app where we're using Google Maps to get the longitude and latitude and longitude, to use that, you can totally do this. This just means you have to implement 2 other APIs. And you might go, well, how is that, right? Well, that's because you already have the code to implement this. And so you're going to then take the results, getting lat and long, and call another API that gives you some more information that returns a result that calls another API. Okay? So that'd be a total of 3, but only 2 you're having to implement on your own, because 1 you already have. If you don't implement the Google Maps API, which by the way is a very popular API, then you would only have to do 2. Okay, so yours would only need to be 2 implementations. And if you're wondering what this means, you're going to again learn more about this week. Okay, so, and I talk about this here, is that, you know, the basic idea of getting some information, a result, and then calling your next one. So let me just show you what mine looks like. I ended up using the Google Maps API. Matter of fact, let me just go ahead and move into, thought I was there. I was doing some work earlier. Okay, right. So I've already run it too. Let me make sure I can just grab the command real quick. Oh no, so, you know what? Somebody last night mentioned this, that the history, anyway, so I'm going to run node app.js. I'm going to pass in an address, right? So I'm using my alias for the yargs. In this case, I'm just going to do Fresno. Now I could do a specific address here. That'd be cool too. No problem. I think you can do it with or without a space. And then I have a search term. So if I wanted to say restaurants, right? So let's do fast food. By the way, I would never search for this, but right now in this case, what it's going to do is actually going to run, and it's going to search my address and give me a list of fast food. And this returns the top 10 listings, right? So this is where I'm taking the first, my address, getting back lat and long, sending that over to another Google API called Places with the category, And the next thing, this is listed out because I also have an optional parameter, which is actually phone. Okay, and in this case, if I give it a number, right, what this will do is actually text me the top entry, right? So that's what I did for mine, and I'm not going to show you in detail, right? But this is calling the geo, and actually I used Axios, which is really great. You'll learn about Axios. I highly recommend it versus Request because of the way it returns promises, right? So in this case, after calling the geo, after calling Google Maps, I use another, like I said, to get places based on that. And then I called after I got the results back, from there, right? And then I call my Axios, right? So then I call Axios here, and then I call my method for sending SMS. Okay, so that's how I've handled it. So I just wanted to give you an idea and just a brief overview right there of what I did for this project. And this is, to me, really fun because you really start to see the power of calling APIs, consuming what comes back, and it really gives you amazing ability to get data and react to that data, something almost every program these days is doing in some way or the other. Okay, so I think this hopefully is enough for getting you started with this. The one thing I did say to several folks last night is it really does benefit you, I think, to come to the first part of class because we'll talk about the code, and that gives you the ability to start prepping for your code reviews because as you saw last night, that's what I was asking for. Okay. The one thing I'm probably going to add to this as I do is actually to add and we'll do it next time, is actually add a MD file, but there was a lot for this time, so I guess I won't add it now that I'm thinking about it. All right, have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you soon.